everyone that this board is following the guidelines as set before us by the legal establishment. We are elected board members, and as such, we have sworn to abide by the rules. The rules are complicated, to say the least, but we will respect them. When we look around the greater Houston area and the state generally, it is clear that we, as a district, have much to be proud of. And I thank all my fellow members for their dedicated services. With this in mind, I will ask if there are any other board members that may have any comments that they would like to make.
I do, Madam President.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to take this opportunity to apologize for what I said at the last board meeting. I probably overreacted a bit. I was being misquoted and lied about. I don't mind being quoted as long as it's done honestly. But the word that I used was used in an inappropriate setting, and for that, I sincerely apologize.
Thank you.
I think one of the really disappointing things was after we saw all those students and the great accomplishments they had, the activities of the board, the things that were going on. We had the aquaponics program. We had all kinds of great things going on, and all we got in the newspaper was garbage. And that was really disappointing to overlook everything positive that happened at the last meeting.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. That being said, we'll go on. We have our audience to patrons.
Yes, Madam Chairman. We're now at the portion of the meeting when the board allots time to hear persons who desire to make comments to the board. Persons who wish to speak to the board must sign up to do so as they arrive, and they must indicate the topic about which they wish to speak. No presentation shall exceed 5 minutes. Delegations of more than 5 persons shall appoint one person to present their views. The board will hear the concerns, but the board cannot deliberate, discuss, or make a decision on any subject that is not posted on the agenda. Persons who speak to the board cannot complain about a district officer or employee in open session. Such concerns are heard in closed session after a proper posting of the agenda item has occurred. As you come forward, would you please state your name and address? Our first speaker is Joe Greenwell.
Joe Greenwell, 6911 Renfro, Richmond. School board members are elected. Thus, you are public officials and politicians. This is a public meeting called by you and must have a section open to individuals who wish to comment upon issues of interest to them. The appropriate place for patrons to discuss board members' performance, behaviors, or activities is during this time. The suggestion that topics be addressed through a normal process and behind closed doors is a restrictive process which violates the patron's right of free speech. Political free speech is enshrined in the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, and as is the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. The United States Constitution, Article 6, Paragraph 2, often called the Supremacy Clause, declares that the federal Constitution is supreme to any state laws or constitutions. It would seem to a logical person that that overrules the board's restricted procedures. Now, a second board president has attempted to silence my comments in an open meeting about an elected official by suggesting that Mr. Torres's name not be spoken. The president did not have a problem with Pastor Anthony Ray Chavez using a board member's name in open session while offering his criticism of Miss Gonzalez. Is this an attempt to silence free speech, an act of discrimination against only me, or is it against speech for which you do not approve? I began my comments at 10:30 into the meeting, and I initially walked away from the podium at 14:15. I did not relinquish the remainder of my time to the chair, as would be expected in Robert's Rules of Orders, and therefore retained the remainder of my 5 minutes. At 14:45, I returned to the podium to seek confirmation that Mr. Torres, in his outburst, had made a vulgar reference to my deceased mother. At 14:53, Dr. Randall rose from his seat and made a call for civility while pointing at me, implying that it was I who had been uncivil. It was Mr. Torres who should have been civil, and it should be noted that his outburst was a violation of the Opens Meeting Act. Dr. Randall then attempted to bully and intimidate me by stating my time had expired when indeed it had not. He then went on to insinuate that he, would have me physically removed from the meeting. I left the podium again at 14:53 with 37 seconds remaining in my 5 minutes. I say he does not speak for the board, nor has any authority to say what the board may or may not do. Or does he? He is not elected to the Board of Trustees, and as such is not a member of said board. Oftentimes, we reveal much about ourselves in times of stress. Dr. Randall's behavior is enlightening and also curious. He asked Mr. Torres to refrain from speaking out of respect for me, referring to himself, not the board president, other board members, the collective board, or patrons, only himself, as if he was the epicenter of everything. Everyone seems to have to bend to his will and demonstrates that he is the arbiter of what the board may and will do. He may function as a consultant, but this board needs to remember he works for it, not the other way around. On an administrative flow chart, there is no way that any superintendent can exist on the same level of the Board of Trustees. How this board agreed to extend Dr. Randall's contract for another year is stupefying. Unless he should resign or retire in the coming year, the board will have to buy out his contract. That will be a waste of the citizens' money. In the coming months, this board will be electing officers for the coming year. Give great deliberations to who you will elect for the 3 positions of leadership, and understand that your leaders must have the strength of character and convictions to take a firm hand on the reins of the district and defer to no one. And in this case, I will relinquish the remainder of my time to the president.
Thank you.
Carolyn Jenkins.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Jenkins. I am a resident of the city of Kennington. I serve on the board there as the city council member and mayor pro tem. My complaint tonight is regarding our bus transportation out in the city of Kennington. I had several of the people there in Kennington complaining about the bus transportation, and I'm one of them as well. But on Lum Road and Braxton Road and H.P. Johnson, now early part of the week, we did get a change in our bus route. And it stated that due to the ridership and address of the riders, there would be only one stop at the corner of Prairie and H.P. Johnson at 6:35, starting on 4/12/16. And this came to me on 4/11, after school was out. My grandbaby gave me this information. So we complied to what they asked us to do. And you come down Prairie Road, on the corner, it's a driveway, which is H.P. Johnson, and that's my resident, 13330 H.P. Johnson. So there's one child that live on Prairie. So he come down to H.P. Johnson on the corner where they are supposed to pick the kids up, and we're standing there. So she decided to go another direction instead of coming in the direction that was given to us. She came down on Lum Road and proceeded on and past H.P. Johnson onto Prairie, and that's where she stopped, and that's where she wanted the kids to get on at. So I did go up to her. I told her who I was, and I asked her, according to this sheet that was given to us, you're supposed to come down Prairie Road and stop at the corner of H.P. Johnson and pick up the kids. She said nothing to me. So I said, okay. I said, are there cameras on the bus? Because I want to make sure that I'm in order and I'm speaking to you at a calm level. So I gave her my card. She took it, and she put it in the trash can. And then she said, I got to go. So I respect that and got off the bus. And the reason why I'm saying it because when she first took that route, the kids was used to either standing on the porch or either they're in the house waiting on the bus. When you come around the curve, you can see the bus, so you have time enough to come out of the house and get there and stand to get on the bus. So at this particular time, she decided she's not going to stop because they weren't standing at the road. So as they're coming out of the house and they proceed on to the bus, she took off and she left the kids there. So that means that my daughter had to come all the way from Houston to pick up her kids and take them to school. Now this morning, when she came by, she came down Prairie Road like she was supposed to, but she stayed at Prairie Road and never came around to H.P. Johnson, and she sit there. And the kids that were supposed to get on the bus, they were sitting on the corner of H.P. Johnson. So we're standing there, and I'm standing up there with them, and I'm videotaping her where she is and how she's coming around, and she just flew around the corner, did not pick up any of the kids at all. By that time, it was another young man, Mr. Jones. He came down Lum Road, and he saw the bus, so he tried to stop the bus, and she stopped. She said, no, your kid can't get on the bus. She left him over at the Country Bell store. That's where she was supposed to have picked up that child. So she wouldn't let the boy get on the bus. So when he came around the corner, he said, did she leave your children too? I said, yes. And then she said, well, I can't believe this woman did this again. I said, well, I tell you what, I'm going to the school. I don't mind taking your kids as well. So mind me, I got about 5 or 6 kids in my car. So when I get to the Visa school, I told Miss Rodriguez, because I had already shared with her earlier, what was going on. And so she said, oh, those was your kids that she left. She said, because she called in, and Anna told her, no, Stephanie, told her, if the kids are not where they are supposed to be, you can leave. But she wasn't where she was supposed to be. So anyway, my complaint is I really would like to see this taken care of tomorrow morning. I guess Mr. Keever, he said that he would talk to him because according to my paper, she's supposed to pick up the children at 13330 H.P. Johnson Street. And so I will be standing there again on tomorrow, so I hope this can be taken care of and I wouldn't have to take the kids, because I do need to go to work, so I won't have to take the kids to school. So that's my complaint.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McKeever, have you got that bus number?
You actually
Okay.
spoke to her right before the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's all, Madam Chairman.
Okay. The next item is a discussion and possible action regarding the procedures for nomination and selection for names of schools. And basically, the meeting for tonight, I just wanted everyone to be able to have a chance to discuss this as a group. And I gave you a copy of kind of what some of my ideals were, so that maybe we can expedite this a little bit. I'm open for anybody that has some ideas as to how we can handle this. You want to start?
Madam Chairman, I feel like the list of the 14 names that you gave pretty well coincide with, I feel like, what was submitted. Certainly if anybody has any additional names that they would like to add, I feel like certainly we would consider that as a board. Anybody else have anything?
I'm going to just, I know I should wait.
Well, I guess I was going to ask a question. We're supposed to be naming 5 schools, elementary and 1 middle school. If we, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, but let's say, for the sake of, we decide not to name all of them at one time, can we still use the names from the 2014 submission if we came back later, or would we have to go through this whole process again, is I guess my question. If we decided just to name the 2 elementary schools that are coming up in wait on where the other locations are to see what names we wish to actually.
So you're wanting to name,
I'm just saying, just for the sake of sake, I'm not saying we're going to do it, but would we have to do the process again? Or can, since these were nominated for the 2014 schools, can we come back to the list again that we already have?
my understanding is that, again, naming the schools
Whatever the
is
school
the
board
board's
wants to do.
pleasure. So if you wanted to name partial and retain the list, you could do that. If you wanted to come back and do a process again with the community, you could do that as well.
Okay, so it's up to us as a board of what process we want to do.
Right,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
why we're talking tonight.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I really didn't want to do another three.
I do have one question, well, two questions. First of all, are we selecting the name for 4 elementary schools or 5 elementary schools? I'm a little confused about this. I thought it was 4.
Should be 5 elementary schools and 1 middle school.
We will be naming 5 elementary schools.
Yes.
I think she's confused because on some correspondence that went out, it initially said 5 schools. And so I think that that's where you got that information from. But it should have said 6 schools, because I read that too.
Okay.
I'm confused on where the 6th school is.
So
The 6th campus
Because
is
the
in,
bond election covered 5 elementary schools.
And
5
then-
elementary plus 6.
Sixth grade.
and the middle school is the 6th campus that you'll be naming.
Sixth grade campus.
Okay. All right, thank you. We're also going to select one school, one name for the middle school in Fulshear,
Correct.
in addition to these 5.
Correct.
Okay. Would y'all mind me just expressing what I was thinking at this moment before y'all take your turn? Okay. Basically, I went down that list and I took anybody that received 2 or more votes. And it turned out to be 14 nominations. And I looked at it and I thought, when I was doing this, I was confused as to how we were going to name the single middle school. And my suggestion would be, or at consideration, could we take out of these 14 and say, separate? We're going to pick 5 names for the elementary school, and then choose one name specifically, submit one name for the middle school itself. Because some of these people, if you read them, they're saying we prefer to be in this area of town. Some people do not necessarily want to be named after an elementary school. So out of these 14, if we were given the chance to go back and revisit those 14, and then designate 5 for the elementary school, 1 for the middle school.
Correct. So that's exactly what the board is slated to do next Thursday. The actual action item will list off elementary 24, elementary 25, 26, 27, 28, and middle school number 5. So you'll have the ability to pick your name for the middle school and put that down, and then pick your names for the 5 elementary schools individually. Now, there are various ways that you could do that in terms of selection from a name to a campus. We do know, obviously, elementary 24 and 25, the locations, but we have projections, but no actual locations for 26, 27, and 28. And so whatever criteria you wanted to use, whether it was alphabetical order or a mix of location and then the remaining names or case by case, you can actually fill in, we want 24 to be this name, 25 to be that name, and if you wanted to pause, as Ms. Danziger said, that would be an option as well. But when you receive the action item, you'll get to put down specifically the name for the middle school and specifically the name for each of the elementary schools numbered 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28.
Would it help if we took these 14 and revisited them and then send you our preference of the first 6 for elementary and the 5th, and then one name for Fulshear's area, the middle school?
It's truly what the board feels is the most appropriate. If you'd like to re-rank after discussion tonight, I can certainly do that and provide that information back to you. If you'd like to discuss tonight and then wait and then go next week name by name, just using Robert's Rules of Order, you can do that. But certainly take the current ranking as it is, have discussion about that top 10, which is really 14 with ties, and then rank again, and we can recalculate those and send them back out for the board to look at. It's really whatever you feel is most appropriate to make that decision.
I like the idea of taking another cut on it recently when you get the.
Take the 14 and
Take
then
the
throw it out.
And when-
That cream should rise to the top on that one, I would think.
And I know when I sent mine in, I did put like little stars by ones I thought would be better for secondary, for the sixth grade school. And I did rank mine, so I think we need to make a consensus if we're sending it back in to rank your order of preference. And this time, if everyone is on the same page with that, and then rank your order of preference for your maybe 3 names, or how many you want for the middle school. Maybe do, and what do you want, we want to rank all 14, or do you want to pick 5?
In my mind was, since we have to pick 6 schools, each one of us pick 6 for the elementary, submit
Well, 5
6
for the
names.
elementary. 5
names. And then everybody submit a name for the middle school, keeping them separate. And then maybe Mike could composite that and at Thursday's meeting, give us those results.
Or maybe even earlier, so that we can...
Right, and you guys could tell me the deadline if you want to do this expeditiously, and, over the weekend, we'll get it back ASAP, or before the workshop, at the workshop, whatever your preference is.
I was thinking Monday, and that would give everybody a chance to
Time
look
before
at it
Tuesday.
for our Tuesday workshop.
I'm not in agreement to use these 14. I'm just looking at, I didn't bring my names. I know I emailed it to you, but I didn't bring it with me tonight. I thought that I would be seeing my list today, I guess, on another sheet of paper. So I'd like to verify if any of mine are on here.
What
One of
we
the things
did-
that's important to me is that, Franklin County is one of the most diverse counties in the nation. And it's real important to me that these names are multicultural, and that we're naming individuals after leaders in the community. They're Hispanic and African American. And I think that's important to our community, and I think it's important for our kids to have individuals to be role models after. So I'm not in agreement with these 14 until I've taken a look at it.
I just want to clarify, the way I came up, there's 25, and then there was one individual for the tennis courts, but at this time, we're only going to focus on the schools. So it came up to be 24, and when I looked at this, I said, those that got 2 votes and up, we have several here that only had 1 vote. So that's the way I came with the cutoff. Any of those that had the 2 and up, and it turned out to be 14.
Well, and certainly I feel like any board member could submit their list of the top 5, however they'd like. Each of us has a choice on whether we want to choose from this list or from the additional. Is that correct?
I think she was trying to say this to be distributed.
I was,
okay.
yeah, since we initially submitted this.
Oh, okay, I understand.
This is what we
And this
have
is
to
how-
work from. If we don't, then we'd have to literally go back and start all over again.
I understand.
So this is kind of the second phase, in that the second phase, we know what the top 24 were. We take those that had 2 or more votes up, and now to try to downsize that to more explicit. Because it took a lot of time to go through those 60-odd names, I think it was, or something, that we managed to get it down to the 24. So that's where I was thinking.
Okay, I understand.
That was my logic.
Do we need to take a
would
vote
need
on
to-
that, on how we're going?
We'd need to make a
move forward?
motion. We are allowed to vote tonight?
You are.
Yeah.
It would probably be preferable if you have a certain procedure in mind that a motion be made and the board vote on. So
Be
that
as
there's-
specific as we can.
So that there's clarity as to what you're expecting the administration and your fellow board members to do.
Is it my place to make that motion then, or to have?
Typically, you would defer to another board member, but there's nothing by law that prohibits you from making the motion.
I'd like to
if
see
you
if
so
they
choose.
understood my,
But let me ask you one more
Okay.
time. How many names are we going to submit? Just 5 now?
get
that
these
what
to the schools that we need. We have 5 schools. and place them in the order that we would like, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth,
And
out of
one-
this,
and
14.
submit one name for the
and then submit one name for the elementary, for the middle school, since it's only one school.
and rank the 5.
Sir?
And rank the 5.
And rank the 5. So the number 1 would go to the first school, number 24.
Or maybe not necessarily, that it's just be one
Correct.
of the top ones, and we can decide,
Well, Thursday would be the time we could
once we get
decide
the
that
5
part.
names, then you can
Yeah.
decide where they're going to.
I also, in my head was, okay, for the middle school, should we maybe take the top 3, if we have 3 nominations,
So,
other than just,
may I make a suggestion?
yes, sir.
Hearing all your discussion, it might be advisable, because you also don't want to create a process where what you submit is essentially a vote that the administration tallies and that yields your result. I don't think that's your intention. I think it's your intention to try to further narrow the process so that when you again come together as a board, that you can have further deliberation and then vote on the final answer. I think it would not be a good idea to rank 1 through 5, because if you are trying to select individual names for individual schools, well, then all of a sudden you necessarily are prioritizing the schools against each other, and I also don't think that's the board's intent. Given that you have 14 names that you've already narrowed the field to, it might be a good idea if board members ranked 2 names next to each of the 6 schools. So you'd look at the list of 14, you'd pick your first choice and an alternate choice and put it behind the middle school, and do that for each of the schools, and then the administration can bring those tallies back to you for further discussion at your next board meeting.
I have a question. With those choices, could they be duplicates? So for example, if we were going to name number 24, could we do our first choice and our second choice? And then if you were 25, then it would be,
I think that's up to you as a board in terms of your process, but what I'm, just for purposes of clarification for all the board members, if you felt very strongly about 2 candidates and wanted to optimize the likelihood that that at least a campus would be named after one of them, you could take 2 names and list the same 2 names.
well, no, I'm not suggesting that. I guess I just don't understand. If we're choosing, ultimately, then we end up with 12 names, correct?
Yes.
So we'd only be narrowing it down from 14 to 12.
Well, you may, let me go back. First, I want to make clear that I don't think there's anything negative about a process where you decide that you want to place one name as a priority for all schools. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. You certainly could do that. But to alternatively address what you were suggesting, it won't necessarily take the field down to 12, because you're going to have every board member submitting different sets of pairings for each of the schools. And so all 14 names may show up on what's originally provided to the administration. It just may be that there are some names that garner more attention than others. But that way, at least the data can be brought back to you, and it allows for further narrowing. But it's not a commitment. You can have further discussion, I think, once you get to that point.
I don't know. I think that I'm getting confused now.
I think that's important.
Because it sounds like when you're saying
I think that's very
14, we're trying to
confusing.
get away from the 14. We're trying to narrow that down.
Well, I think
And we're
it
really not trying to name a
inherently,
specific
it inherently will.
We just want the elementary.
But you can't expect that because you've got 6 schools, that a particular board member, when they go through the names, is going to include 12 names. They may only include 8 names and replicate certain of the names amongst the choices. That would be up to the discretion of the board member.
Well, what if we just did what Ms. Kay suggested without ranking them? Because that essentially wouldn't be
You
a
certainly,
vote, because we're not putting them in a ranked order. We're just submitting.
We're just showing
A
our
specific-
preference
yes,
for
a
that name,
specific-
is really what we're trying to do at
Right.
this point. We're just trying to see, I want to feel where, what name rises to the top
Yes.
that's, and it might be that's not going to be number 24, but it's
Sure.
a name that we really do one.
Feel like a school should be named after that particular
Right.
That'll
person.
raise the cutoff up higher if we don't rank them. We're now going to have a smaller group of names to discuss if we don't rank them, and that.
Right, and I think,
That seems
Because again,
fair.
we're still not going to all choose the same six. So
Right,
it's not going to be six. It's still going to be more than six. It's just,
I
You
think
might
that-
end up with 10.
right, and I think it emphasizes Mrs. Roberts' point. Again, this isn't necessarily a vote, it's trying to get where all the board feels the names with the most interest are. So we've got 14 now, and you have your binder with the supplemental information. You all could review those 14 and then pick a number, whether it's your top 6 or your top 8, and essentially re-rank it, where you'd see then, after looking at those things again, where you are. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a vote. You just now have another further step where we went the first round to have those discussions next week, but you'd all be familiar with these 14 versus the 65 plus.
I like not ranking them.
Yes.
I would rather get
But-
just the names that come up more frequently, so it
Right.
just shrinks our list for discussion.
And specify the top
And
6.
do we do, how many for the middle school? Just one or maybe 3?
I'm thinking
I
3.
would say more than one, sure.
Okay. I don't think they've had this many names ever submitted. That's why we're having such a hard time. I mean, look at those binders.
There's a lot of names.
I think it speaks to the quality of the list that you got.
Yes,
Yes.
it
Your
does.
first pass, you got 26 or 27 of them. It says
Correct.
there are a lot of good people out there, so.
This
you
is
know,
making it harder
Not
on
everybody's
us.
going to be happy, but, you know, we have to narrow down, and I think we do just what you say. It narrows a group down, then you take another cutoff point, and you've got your smaller group to work with
Right.
next time, so
Okay, so,
I think if we submitted 2 middle schools, I think that would probably give us
Okay.
enough of an idea.
so 5 elementary and 2 middle schools.
And you can duplicate those names, or is it?
No, because we're
No,
not
no.
going to assign them to anything.
Yeah.
We're just going to put names into a hat. And everybody throws their, and then we're going to throw it to him.
So we're submitting 7 names total, is that
Correct.
But we're going to be specific.
Right.
5 will
7
be
total.
specifically saying elementary, 2 will say specifically middle school. We have to separate it to be able to make a
Let me
final
ask-
vote.
Let me ask this question. If you submit only to the elementary schools, does that eliminate any of those names from being considered for the middle school?
Oh, you could put them in both lists if you wanted to.
No, I don't want to, but I'm just asking, does the one nullify the other, or is it,
That's up to
and
us.
2 categories.
okay.
And I think maybe that's why you may not want to separate the middle school at this point. If you're looking for your 6, 7, or 8 best names, you could just pick, 8 or 10, re-rank those, and you'd have them. If you're worried about the mixing and the matching. But if you want to get more specific, you certainly can at this point say 3 middle and, whatever arbitrary number for the elementary. It's just whatever you all feel comfortable with as you
If
discuss.
I'm going to revisit the names, I want to know if I'm going to do a middle school or if it's an elementary. To me, that's going to make a difference, because when I had to pick this,
I think we're at
it
that
was
point that we
difficult.
kind of need to
And
have
I
more
agree with
clarity.
that. I guess the only thing that I don't want to happen is for someone who is a qualified candidate that is being considered for the middle school, be eliminated for a possible elementary school because they were being considered for a middle school. Does that make sense?
Well, I think as long as we have the capability of putting a name in both lists, correct?
Yeah.
That wouldn't eliminate them.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I said, put them in both
So you
lists.
want-
In both,
Yeah.
and then we could discuss it at the Tuesday meeting.
You could actually
I see. Still have that for
5
open
names
discussion.
submitted, 2 of them twice, if you felt.
If that's
strongly
what you
about
feel
those.
strongly
Okay,
about.
I understand.
Okay,
That sounds very
All right,
fair.
so could we come up with
so let's see.
a motion that we would go to naming, submitting
I'll try that.
6
wanna
names for
try
the
it?
elementary
Try
school? And- Okay, go.
Make a motion that we submit another list of names. We will submit 5 candidates for elementary school names, unranked, and 2 candidates for middle school, unranked. Names can appear simultaneously in each list.
I had from the narrowed list of 14.
From the already narrowed list of 14 finalists.
Thank you.
And be submitted to
Be submitted to Mr. Rockwood by
Monday.
No later than Monday.
no later than Monday.
Would that work for you?
Yes, ma'am.
April 8th.
I'll be happy to second that.
April 8th.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
We're
Aye.
going to discuss it.
Okay, we go back to
Let's go back to
discussion.
discuss.
Okay, we can go back.
Yeah, she's right.
Yes.
Just for the record, it appears that there's only one African American on the list of 14. No Hispanics. And what, 50%, over 50% of the school district is Hispanic? Mike?
I would have to clarify.
I think it's about 48%.
I would like to note, though, we do have, I don't know how many elementary schools
probably have two.
that do have.
You have two.
uh,
You have two, Arredondo,
we still-
Velasquez.
We still have.
It's a shame.
several.
It's a shame.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
2 opposed. Motion carries. Okay, just for a matter of time, would it be permissible for us to go to 3 first to discuss?
Yes.
Would that be agreeable to everyone? That would be the discussion and a possible action regarding selection of a facilitator for the board training. I think that'll probably take less time. Would everyone be in agreement to that? Okay. Under the board training operations, it's my understanding that I do have the authority to pick the trainers for our workshops, but since we did that one with TASB and I picked it, I just kind of got the impression that some people were not too impressed. So I went out to ask Dr. Randall for some help in getting some other names and soliciting that. We have 2 options. Either y'all can give me the okay to talk to the consultants and pick that person myself, or we could go together and say perhaps that we would want a committee that would want to talk to those people and come up with a recommendation of which consultant to have. This is not going to be a short 2-hour, 3-hour session. This is going to be an intense, possibly 2-day training.
When are you proposing we do it?
Well, that we're on the timeline as far as getting it done as early as possible. It's not going to be before July. It'd probably be somewhere in July or August. If any of these people that we contact would be able to put us in their schedule. So with Dr. Randall's help, he had put down the travel, a little bit of the expense. I did not call any of them. I started to, and I thought, no, I want to get some insight of what you're looking for. And would any of you like to be part of that decision?
Are these ones that have information that we can look at beforehand about them?
And if we would just choose a committee, if you want to do that, or if you wanted me to do that, I do have the phone numbers. I did talk to one member of a school district that they did have Kathy Minsberg, and they highly recommended her. She has a lot of insight as to how school boards can work together as a team. They just were very impressed. I have several other names, unfortunately, I did not get to. Roz Cat, I have also heard that that's another person that can really get you talking without realizing what you're doing, and at the end comes out with very good results. And then there was TASB as their consultant, and perhaps y'all would want to give them another chance.
If we don't use TASB, do we get still board training credit, or do you have to use TASB to get board?
We don't get board training for work, for,
Oh, we got some.
I don't think, we didn't get training. We did?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that would be the one thing I'd make sure we get training. I wouldn't want to spend 2 days somewhere and not have the credit for it, so that would be some information that we need to get. If we come up with, you want me to get it, I would give you the report next Tuesday, or if you want to get a couple of, you're going to take that over and do it and turn in a report on Tuesday. So we can make a decision on Thursday. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at those Board of Operating Procedures. You're going to have to do quite a bit of homework. I did get a Board of Operating Procedures from Fort Bend Independent School District, developing board agendas, member conduct during board meetings. They're very clear. Ours is, I think, 9 pages long, and theirs is like 16.
Are we planning on just doing the operating procedures, or are we actually going back to board policy?
Well, that would have to be also decided. Do we want to do all that at one time? Because we would have to talk to the consultant.
I think we ought to do that at one time, because I think there's some board policy issues. The operating procedures are a little bit more condensed. You know, these are daily things. I think there's some things that need to be in the board policy that support these operating procedures.
Well, everything has to be aligned.
Everything has to be aligned, so if
you don't do one or the other,
something up there in the operating procedures and not be supported by board policy, so I think it has to be a workshop that includes issues on both of those. I can take a look at operating procedure and I get in there and, okay, 3 or 4 things, I'm happy with that. I get the board policy, that's when you got to get down to the nitty-gritty and the way you phrase it, and that's where where the rubber really hits the road, so.
So it would be not just board operating procedures, but it would also be board policies.
Board policy as well.
I know in every discussion meeting that I ever went to, it was also on board goals, to revisit the goals that the board has for the district.
And that's what we usually do with TASB.
I would do that as
fall.
something separate, because you're biting off a lot to chew with just the operating procedures and board policy, and I think that
Agree.
Yeah, that ought to be a separate.
Because doesn't TASB have to come in and usually does our board goals? That's something that we have to bring them in once a year.
Well, your requirement
Required.
is that you do the board superintendent team building. And what you designate as far as that team building agenda,
your goals.
that's up to the board. Typically, what the board has done is use that opportunity to revisit or look at priorities.
And we usually do that in the fall is what
Yes,
they
ma'am.
like for us to do.
As you note, the operating procedures are pretty much one-liners, but the support of those one-liners go back to the board policy, which we need to do. So that's why I say.
So when we're discussing with any of these 3, or if anybody would come up with some other consultants.
Well, that may influence it. They have to be sort of familiar with board policy and how that works, both the local and the legal.
When I talked to the board member with Kathy's, they're recommending Kathy. They said there is no stone unturned, and they had been on the board for like 7 years, I think.
Well, if you get that higher recommendation, is it necessary for us to go back and revisit these if you've already got good recommendations about one of these?
Well, like I said, I wanted to include everybody, because, I mean, this is a decision I felt bad about with TASB. I was really gung-ho, and I think the communication was just off.
That was
Yeah, but lesson
the
learned.
material in the presentation, it wasn't your. The person from TASB did exactly
What they're supposed to.
what they were supposed
And
to do.
these two groups, there's one called CRSS, the other one is called Into Learning, and you can look at either one of them online and get an idea of what they do, but they cover a lot. They don't just cover this.
Do we have a budget that we have to adhere to, or can we?
I failed to ask you, but we do need I would like to see as far as training, just how much money are we allowed to use?
We would have to pull the budget to see what's listed, but you can always do an amendment.
Okay.
Because
this is something we haven't done, my understanding, we haven't done this in a long time. So,
It's your choice.
okay.
And it wasn't necessarily budgeted for, depending on the amount here. but you could certainly make decisions about what is already allocated as to whether or not you want to spend that, or like what was mentioned earlier, you amend the budget.
I think it ought to be based on the quality of what we think you're going to get rather than how much money we have to spend, because you
But
can spend $10,000 and get a bucket of water, or you can get $10,000 and get a bucket of cream, so, or $20,000, so, you know.
Well, and I just made one call. I've got several names for each one of these companies as far as other school districts that I'd be comfortable in calling them, board members, and saying, you know, what did you think, or what did y'all miss, or what do we need to, kind of be ready for? What should we ask for? But it was just a matter of, do y'all guys want me to do it, or would one of you want to help with it?
Since I'm the retired one on the board, I'd be happy to.
Make a phone call or two.
I'd be happy to work with you.
Okay, if you could work with me?
Yes, I would.
Because, we've put a lot of time lately. I just haven't realized how much time that
Yeah, let's,
we've really had here.
yeah, you set the time, we can talk to those folks and all.
Okay, so I guess we would need to have a motion.
Well,
to-
so just to clarify, you can do one of two things, I think. You could postpone this item to your next regular workshop and meeting for decision. Or the board could simply move to delegate that authority to you to make the final decision, and you can enlist the aid of Mr. Steenbergen to assist you in that selection process.
So that would be in the form of a motion? Or
Yeah, either
Or we
one.
can just
I think
defer
those are
it
the
till
two
next.
options that you largely are faced with right now.
Well, ultimately, that's what we would do. We'd get together and then turn in the report, what we found, hopefully by
But
Tuesday.
what he's saying, we could make the selection.
Yeah.
We could be authorized to go ahead and make that selection, or we could be authorized to talk to them and then bring that back to the board.
With in the form
With
of
the
a
recommendation.
I would propose that rather than us
Okay.
making it, we bring it back to the board with the recommendation.
It's in our hands.
It's in our hands to bring it to the board. We will recommend to the board, and then the board would approve it. I don't necessarily want authority to.
So we really don't have to take any action tonight, is what you're saying?
You really don't if you, by consensus.
Because it always says discuss and possible action regarding selection, and since we're not going to actually select, we can defer it till...
We're just going to agree that this
We'll
is
be
the
working to
process
bring a
that we're going to
recommendation to the
follow.
board, and that's
Okay.
when the board. That's correct. Thank you.
And could you
Okay.
get, once you make bring that, can you have an idea of time frame
Right.
with that
We can
recommendation?
give them the subject, and then we can go on and kind of get
'Cause I would like to-
their quote and their timeline.
Of when they're available. That might make a big difference.
How much it takes, what they would recommend, yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Kay, I have a question.
Yes.
Is all of that information, do you think that that's feasible to have by next Tuesday, or do you need extra time?
I think we can do it.
Oh, yeah, Bill.
I was on the
I
phone
hope
one
you
day, I
don't wanna
realized,
do
for
it for a
8
while.
hours,
Well-
talking to people.
We've got tomorrow, and then I'm headed for Austin for the Legislative Action Committee on Saturday.
Ouch.
And then Monday, we may or may not have an activity at Thomas Elementary, I'm not sure.
Okay, so how about maybe for Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday, I feel a lot more comfortable with that, particularly since we've got to submit school name list by Monday, and time is kind
Okay.
of tight between.
That's what I'm going to say, this is a lot to...
So we'll turn in our recommendations on Thursday.
I don't mind
Do we have to
making a
get that
phone
on the
call
agenda?
to...
Yes, ma'am.
I think I can do it on Tuesday.
Okay. Then the next item, our final item, is discussion of possible actions regarding board operating procedures and board policies governing board member ethics and conduct.
And that we're going to work on when we do the other.
I think the way things are turning out this evening, I had down as far as our goals were going to be to have a group decide on the board training, which we've already done. And these were just some of my notes in talking to TASB of things that we might have to consider that go into the board operating procedures. We can open for discussion anything else according to the ethics, as which we might want to include or not forget or add to it in the discussion, which would give us a little bit of a guideline of what to tell the consultants we'd like to cover. So I just typed up what was in my head, what I've learned, and I'm going to open that up for discussion for anybody.
And just to be clear, this is also what we want to address in what we're trying to accomplish
In the
sometime
training.
in the summers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's so many things that I think the general public thought we have the authority to do very quickly. And I think we're finding ourselves too, we have to go through a process. And some of this is not in place, well, it's not very clear in our board operating procedures. And we need to visit it and clarify it. I don't know if you guys feel like we need to do that now, tonight, or...
Personally, what I think is that as you and Mr. Steenbergen search for a consultant, that this be a part of your, what you're looking for as when you're interviewing or however you're going to move forward, because just reading it briefly just now, it's definitely, they're all definitely things that we need to address.
And what we get in this, there are some legal requirements out there, but some things we may want to put in there go beyond. It may be legal to do some things, but there's some things that we don't want to do. I'll give you, for instance, campaign finance, donations. It's perfectly legal for a company, employees of a company, to give money to board members that are running, individuals in that company. But when they accumulate enough people to make large sums of money from individuals from one company, the appearance is bad. It may be all legal. It's very legal. You can have a list of 25 names, and your people out of your company can donate to somebody's campaign. But to the general public, it looks awful because you end up with $2,500 from one company that we may or may not be doing business with. Perfectly legal, ethically, I don't like it, and that's why I think some of these things you roll down is get past the legal point, and it's some of the things that we want from an ethical standpoint as a board to support.
So they're following local policy.
It goes into local policy.
And we really don't have a local policy. We have a legal, but in reading and looking at this, that's why I gave you all that local governance, board members, vacancies, ethics, conflict of interest. You start reading all of this, it's all legal.
But you have
I don't see any
you have a number of
local
thou shalt not, but there's no here's what you do, here's what happens if you do.
Consequences.
There's no consequence to it, and so what's the point of having the rule that there's no consequence? So that's
Yes, sir.
yes.
So, Madam Board President, can I make a recommendation to the board regarding the process that is in keeping with some of the concerns that Mr. Steenbergen has raised? Anytime you revise your board operating procedures, as has already been recognized tonight, they need to be consistent with your board policies. I think we all agree with that. And so anytime, though, you start revising your board policies, they also have to be consistent with state law. And so it ends up being a fairly cumbersome process to ensure that you have perfect fidelity between your policies, your board operating procedures, and state law. So the concern I have for you as a board is if you meet with this facilitator and you start from all the collective thoughts of all the board members, both past and present, you're going to spend all your time as a board not getting the value of the facilitator to work on your team building. You're going to spend all your time trying to work line by line through what you may want your board operating procedures or board policies to look like, and I'm not sure that that is the most effective use of the board's time. My recommendation would be that you, Madam Board President, appoint a committee to make proposed recommended changes to the board operating procedures and policies to include concerns of ethics, and to hopefully have that recommendation in place before you actually meet with your facilitator so that you can have efficient, meaningful discussion about the committee work that's done. The committee's work is merely advisory. It doesn't mean that the full board has to agree with the committee's recommendation, but it's a far better starting point to have done that, had them compare with policy, and had some legal review to ensure certain aspects are consistent with state law, and then have a meaningful discussion with the facilitator and each other around that.
I think that's exactly right. That's where we get our focus in working with them. You have those, our little packages before you get there. Otherwise, you've got
You're going
this
for-
size of
right.
book you're working with instead of.
And as a service, and Ms. Danziger raised this earlier, you also, because you receive both the legal and the suggested local policies from the Texas Association of School Boards, they as a service will review any of your proposed policy revisions so that they will tell you if they see something that looks lawful or unlawful to help you be in conformance. And I will tell you, as many laws as there are out there, federal and state regulations, changing case law, it's a valuable service, and you should avail yourself of it before you make any final determination regarding your policies.
I was going to bring that point up, that if we had a committee and did that, it'd behoove us to send it and have it looked at and revised with them before we even brought it to the table, instead of bringing something
But
that
I
might be
gave,
changed.
I gave every one of you a copy of that. We did do that back in, I don't know what if it says the year on here. It was either 13 or 14. And that's why I hope y'all all still have it. If not, I've got 2 copies. And it showed where changes were made, suggested. It did take us a long time to do this. We did it individually, then we had a night of comprising all of this, and it was given to the president with the understanding that TASB would look at it. Unfortunately, it didn't get that far.
But that's
So,
procedures, not
I have-
policies, is what
yeah,
I'm
but-
talking about.
It's Board of Operating Procedures.
I know, but what, if you wanted us to do board operating procedures and then looking at board policy, I'm concerned about doing anything with board policy without TASB.
It would take the same amount of work as we
Correct.
did this.
Correct.
And that's what I
Correct.
had on here, Board of Operating Procedures. Could we appoint a 3-member committee to start that? And then school board goals and policies. And then if we needed to add, I typed this up so that I could kind of have some leeway or direction on what we did want to cover. And having that 3-person committee would expedite, because every board member did this, and then they submitted it, I think, to Karen, and she had to try to compose all of it, and then we ended up back to square one. So having the committee would be highly recommended. It will take some time.
But if we have a committee, if you're a board member not on that committee, you still can submit,
You submit your ideas or your suggestions, yes.
and the committee just
Ask them
reviews
to
those.
incorporate it.
I don't mind being on that committee. or
Well,
anything.
you know what, I tell you what, I have a little bit of concern about that. I think that if you have suggestions that those, and you're not on the committee, you should probably wait and bring them up at the appropriate time where you have a duly called meeting. Because at that point, you arguably are engaged in a deliberation amongst a quorum of board members. And so I would avoid that.
Would you work on this before you get the facilitator to come and work with you?
Yes.
Yes, I would.
That's what he said.
I would try to refine the committee's work as much as I could before I got to the facilitator. And this may be a long process, depending on how much suggested revision that there is. So, I think you have a willingness to embark on this process, but I would caution you that you really don't know what it's ultimately going to look like or what the timetable for it will be until the committee begins its work.
And it might behoove us to make sure the committee can complete what they need to do before we actually have the facilitator coming in.
And when I talk to the facilitator, it would be also their suggestion. If this is
Correct.
what we're planning, how long
Correct.
in your experience, how long does it
Right.
take? What's a good timeline? And start working with the timeline. Okay.
Right.
But
'Cause-
I will tell you, to do it well,
It's going to take a few months.
it really takes some time to ensure that you have precisely chosen the words that are consistent with what your real intent is.
particularly when you consider the recycle from TASB we're likely to have when they say, that was dumb.
They don't do that.
And we'll have to do it again.
And when we go
I'm
in
a firm
June,
believer that that's how you learn. You learn by your mistakes.
and when June, we're going to find out all the changes again.
Okay.
Every time we turn around, there's changes.
So, do we make the decision that we would
Well, so
appoint a
honestly,
three-committee?
I was trying to look up your board policies, although I'm having trouble getting them online. I think that your board policies likely provides the board president the prerogative to appoint ad hoc committees. And
It
if
does.
that's the case,
It does.
then I don't think you need any vote of the board to do that. You would just be exercising your board-provided authority to do that.
So I would be at liberty to contact the board members to see who would like to be on.
Yes.
And then pick. Okay.
Yes, if it turns out that I'm incorrect in review of the policy, then my recommendation would be that we come back to the board at the next workshop and meeting and place it on the agenda, and then the board can take action on the creation of the committee.
I had the same understanding, and I'll just go back again to all of you. You know, we want to be open, but to have one person to make decisions, if we can have these workshops and openly talk about everything and get on a better wavelength, I mean, we've only been here for an hour, and I think we know how to get started now. And if y'all like this idea, we can have more workshops whenever we need to. Is there anything that we have not covered over these three topics? Is everybody comfortable with as it was going? Dr. Randall, do you have any comments? Guys, I should say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Texas. Guys, it just comes out of you. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you in the audience, thank you for so much coming to what really is our first special board meeting with this new board here. We're going to have more. There's a lot of decisions I could make personally, but I feel like this is the way to get it out to you guys, how we're thinking, and maybe you could call, or you have some different suggestions, you could call any of us and communicate more. And that's the whole idea of this type of a workshop. So I know it took a lot of time from the administrators to be here. I really appreciated that. For the police officer standing back there, I had orders to be out of here by 8:30. So I don't know for what. Anyway, to Dr. Randall, I appreciate everybody's presence and giving us your advice and your concerns. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:34.
Yeah, nothing closed session, I guess.
Oh, no closed sessions.